Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 257. It's been a wild day, folks, huh? I woke up super early this morning expecting these documents to be dropped relatively early, and they didn't end up dropping until about, 6:30, 7 o'clock-ish Pacific Standard Time. So, right when the hockey game was about to start, the drops came in. Typical of my luck. So instead of watching the Golden Knights game, I started diving and digging in to the unsealed documents. And so far, like I said recently, there's nothing there too ground shaking right now that I've come across that is not known to those of us who have been following the case. But there is a lot of context there. And for those who have not been following the case religiously the way a lot of us have been, these are huge, damning documents. And if that brings more light into the room and that brings more eyes onto the case, then I am all for it. And again, I haven't read all 638 pages yet. I've read probably about 110 pages or so far. So I still have a ways to go, but I wanted to hop on and do a quick daily drop and read the most recent article from Law and Crime, considering their coverage has been so good throughout this whole entire ordeal, and they've helped, the layman like us get through the legalese of the situation. Because I'll tell you what, I feel like Joe Pesci and My Cousin Vinny reading through some of this stuff. Some of it just makes your head spin, right? Well, all right, what does this mean? What does that mean? So there's a lot of legwork to do as well, so you understand what you're reading, right? But Law and Crime has just been fantastic throughout this whole thing, putting things into layman's terms so that people like us understand a little bit better what is going on. So, this article, like I said, is from lawandcrime.com. The author is Aaron Keller. And the headline, Secret Jeffrey Epstein documents have been released by court order. Read them all here. So obviously I'll post this link in the description box. And if you have not checked out the documents for yourself yet, make sure that you hit this article and you do a quick scan for yourself or a deep dive or whatever it is you might be. Either way, you will have access to these documents so you can read them for yourself. And that link will be posted with all of the other links inside of the description box. A hard-fought court battle by alleged groomer and enabler, co-conspirator, fellow scumbag, child abuser, Ghislaine Maxwell has failed, and a cache of 47 previously secret court records pertaining to Maxwell's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein and his alleged survivors has been released. And remember what Judge Preska said. These are going to be coming out in a rolling manner. These are not the only documents that are coming out. So they have other batches that they're going to be releasing as well. And so this cache here is the opening salvo, right? The first of many. Remember, the first dump had over 2,000 pages, and I expect when all is said and done that we get to a number that exceeds that or at the very least equals it. So remember, these are not all of the documents that we're going to see at some point, but this is just the opening salvo. The combined documents contain 638 pages in total by our count. Law and Crime downloaded all of the documents from Pacer, the electronic repository of federal court records, when they were released on Thursday night. And again, that link will be in this article so that you can go and check these out yourself. Right? There's some interesting stuff in there, especially for those of you who have not been following this case for a long time, or for those of you who might be confused about some of the statements made or comments and depositions that people refer to. This is more of a resource for you to fall back on and find the answers right from the sources themselves, the survivors, in this case, Virginia, etc., as opposed to getting it at second or third hand, right? And it's always what I suggest to do. Always, if it's possible, go directly to the source, because then you don't have to worry about things being missing, people omitting things or anything like that. You're getting it raw and unadulterated from the person who lived it. So that's why I think that these court documents are a big deal, and it also provides weight behind the allegations that are made, because these aren't just made, these allegations and these depositions aren't done in a vacuum, right? This is under oath with the threat of perjury hanging over your head, as we see Ghislaine Maxwell suffering from perjuring herself in these very documents. So it's a big deal, and it adds enormous weight to the allegations, in my opinion. Electronic searches of the documents came up blank for the words Trump and Clinton. However, the names of both presidents do appear in the documents. The names are just not easy to find. The Mar-a-Lago Club is mentioned dozens of times, as are Great Britain's Prince Andrew, aka the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, and former Harvard Law School professor Alan, I kept my underpants on, Dirty Dershowitz. That filthy rat son of a bitch. He is the worst of the worst, in my opinion. This is a man that was integral in getting the plea deal for Jeffrey Epstein. Meanwhile, he was under allegations himself of abusing Virginia, the same person that the plea deal is going to basically screw over. It's just, none of it is right. And the fact that Alan Dershowitz has not really been put on blast by the legacy media is disgusting to me. And I guess you could probably tell by the way I comment on this man, or excuse of a man, whenever he's brought up in an article, would let you know just exactly how I feel about him and how I feel about the role he played within this whole entire thing. In one deposition, Epstein accuser Virginia Roberts said Epstein himself is the one who took the widely publicized photo of herself with Prince Andrew, aka the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family. Epstein used Roberts' own Kodak camera, she said. And we've heard that before for those of us who have been following it. And again, remember, like I said, we don't know what's in these documents. We don't know if there's going to be any bombshells, but I'm operating under the suspicion that there is not going to be anything in these 638 pages that is absolutely earth-shattering. I think within those depositions, however, I think that's where you're going to find a lot of meat and potatoes. Here, Roberts mentions Clinton and other famous people on Epstein's plane. The snippet attached here is from page 145 of the combined document. JS. I want to deal with things separately in order to respect some of the reservations that you have. So I'm going to ask you who the people were that you remember flying with Jeffrey on his plane when you were personally present, without regard to whether there was any sexual activity that occurred on the plane or not. So I'm not asking you to implicate any of these famous people in improper conduct, but just tell me what the names of the people are that you remember that you consider to be famous people. Okay, this is Virginia answering. Okay, there was Naomi Campbell, Heidi Klum, there was Bill Clinton, there was Al Gore, there was a whole bunch of models I wouldn't really honestly be able to give their names. There was Matt Groening, the producer of the Simpsons cartoon, Jacques Cousteau's granddaughter, a lot of interior designers, architects, politicians. I'm just trying to think of as many names as possible for you. Off the top of my head, that's as good as I can get for now. The immediate follow-up made it clear that sexual improprieties were not being alleged. The questioner was merely after the names of people who were on Epstein's planes. And again, these are enablers, right? These aren't people who were implicated in abusing Virginia, but these are people that were around when these trafficked girls were being abused. So while they might not have been involved in the actual abusing of these girls, the fact that they were around when it was happening is beyond the limits of gross and is borderline making them complicit. JS. Just a few other follow-up things I want to ask you, and again, if any of these questions are questions that you're uncomfortable in responding to, then don't hesitate to tell me that. Do you have any recollection of Jeffrey Epstein specifically telling you that Bill Clinton owes me favors? Virginia. Yes, I do. It was a laugh, though. He would laugh it off. You know, I remember asking Jeffrey, what's Bill Clinton doing here? What's Bill Clinton doing here kind of thing? And he laughed it off and said, well, he owes me a favor. He never told me what favors they were. I never knew. I didn't know if he was serious or if it was just a joke. And again, this all goes into the whole premise of this being a blackmail operation and Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell being run as assets by the intelligence community. He told me a long time ago that everyone owes him favors. They're all in each other's pockets. The lawyer, when you say you asked him why is Bill Clinton here, where was here? Virginia, on the island. The lawyer, when you were present with Jeffrey and Bill Clinton on the island, who else was there? Virginia, Ghislaine, Emmy Taylor, and there were two young girls that I could not identify. I never really knew them well anyway. It was just two girls from New York. Lawyer, and were all of you staying at Jeffrey's house on the island, including Bill Clinton? Virginia, that's correct. He had about 4 or 5 different villas on his island, separate from the main house, and we all stayed in the villas. Lawyer, were sexual orgies a regular occurrence on the island at Jeffrey's house? Virginia, yes. Look, this is damning for Bill Clinton. Even if he wasn't partaking in any of this sexual misconduct that we know of, the fact that he was on this island while these orgies were happening, don't you think this should be a bigger story in the media? Don't you think that the media should have been all over this for years? But instead, they have chosen to ignore it. Now ask yourselves, folks, why? Elsewhere, Roberts described the inside of Epstein's bedroom on his private island. The answer and the following questions surrounded Maxwell's alleged sex acts there. Okay, large, stony, he had a king-size bed with posts on it. There was a large door, I think it's called a door, where you put your clothes. There was an adjacent bathroom with a more stony look, giant tub. Question, what color was the paint on the wall? Answer, it was stone. Question, what color was the bedspread? Answer, white. Question, what color were the sheets? Answer, white. Question, and you saw Ghislaine Maxwell have sexual contact with an unknown, unnamed female in that room, correct? Answer, absolutely. Now remember, the answers are given by Virginia here, and the questions are being asked by the lawyer. Question, all right. When were you there that you saw this happen? Answer, this happened on so many occasions. The island was a place where orgies were a constant thing that took place. And again, it's impossible to know how many. And like I said, it wasn't just Jeffrey's room. It was outside, and it was... Question, what sexual contact did you observe Ghislaine Maxwell have with a female by the pool at an orgy on the U.S. Virgin Islands? Answer, well, there was quite a few girls, and it was, excuse me if I'm saying this in an inexplicit way, but I don't know how else to say it. So if you don't understand, please let me know. Girl-on-girl action. So there was a lot of, what's the word for it? Licking vaginas and breasts. This is Ghislaine Maxwell on the island while Bill Clinton's present, and this is not a huge, gigantic, mega story. I understand that a lot of people still want to protect Bill Clinton for some reason or another, but this is damning information, folks. It's been out there for those of us who have been following this story. We've known this stuff, but now that it's coming out in the media, well, I hope that the legacy media jumps on board and he gets the same treatment that Prince Andrew is getting over in England. Maxwell pressed the courts to keep the records hidden from the public, but Loretta A. Preska, a federal judge sitting in the Southern District of New York, ultimately ordered that redacted versions of the documents be made public. Maxwell's efforts to stall the release of the documents, including a blizzard of court papers on Wednesday, July 29th, and continuing into Thursday, July 30th. The request culminated at the trial court level with a request for a last-ditch effort telephone conference with Preska. Hundreds of pages were simultaneously filed with the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. It was all in vain. And that's what I told you folks that was going to be the case today. I knew that this wasn't going to have any legs, and the fact that they filed all of this stuff so late in the game was going to work against them. Judge Preska was not playing games with them. She wanted this stuff to be released, and here we are. Maxwell's attorneys attempted to argue that redactions to the documents by attorneys for Roberts were not properly made. They also attempted to proffer their own set of redacted documents to cure the alleged problems. Prior to receiving Miss Maxwell's latest, last-minute request, the court conducted an in-camera review of plaintiff Virginia Roberts' proposed redactions to the materials, Preska wrote. Having heard nothing from Miss Maxwell's late this morning, the court found Miss Roberts' proposed redactions, which included minimal redactions of personally identifiable information, the names of non-parties, and descriptions of non-party conduct that would allow readers to discern the identity of a given non-party, to be appropriate. In other words, Maxwell's high-paid, high-profiled Harvard lawyers, well, they got beat to the punch. They were late with their filings, Preska was not having it, and she slapped them right in their chops. In other words, Roberts' redactions were sufficient, Preska determined. It appears from court dockets that Maxwell's attorneys were busy filing appellate court documents when Preska was hearing nothing from them at the district court level. The judge suggested Maxwell's attention should have been focused on the redactions, not the appeal. And it's funny to me to see this, right? Preska giving them a lesson on how to do business. You would think that these high-profile, Harvard-trained lawyers would have their shit together, but I guess not. While Miss Maxwell gripes that Miss Roberts submitted her proposed redactions to the court late on July 29th, Miss Roberts at a minimum gave the court time to conduct a review of her proposed redactions while preserving the original schedule for unsealing. By contrast, Miss Maxwell, at 2 p.m., informed the court that she is finalizing her proposed redactions and that she will be ready to provide them to the court at some undefined point today. And this is the sort of environment they're used to conducting themselves in, right? Where they hold the keys, where they make the rules, where they decide when and where court documents are going to be released. Well, that shit ended today in glorious fashion in Judge Preska's courtroom. On top of this, and despite the court's instruction that the parties work together to ensure that the materials were properly redacted by the appointed time, Miss Maxwell apparently has not provided to Miss Roberts her proposed redactions either. For reasons that should be very plain, this is entirely unworkable. This is what we call a fatality move, right? Remember in Mortal Kombat, the video game, when you would do a finishing move and it would say fatality? This is basically what happened to Ghislaine Maxwell's absurd last-minute objections. With one additional slam and a footnote, the documents were unsealed a few hours later at about 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday. Just yesterday, the court admonished Miss Maxwell for filing an 11th hour request for reconsideration on grounds that could have been raised well before the court ordered the relevant documents unsealed. The court is troubled, but not surprised, that Miss Maxwell has yet again sought to muddy the waters as the clock ticks closer to midnight. And it's great to hear the judge say that, right? I stated this earlier because it's obvious to anyone paying attention that that's what they were doing all the time, muddying the waters and attempting to gain the upper hand to make sure that the narrative moves in their direction. The appeals court did not rule on Maxwell's request for intervention in the matter. The court's docket indicates, here is what was released Thursday. More documents are slated to be released as late as Monday. So again, folks, we're not done yet. There's going to be more documents. They're coming in a rolling fashion. Preska was very clear about that when she made the original ruling, and you can expect to see more as the days go by and we get deeper and deeper into this case, because there is much more to be revealed. And there's going to be flight logs, etc., etc. So all I can say is make sure that you have a sufficient supply of popcorn on hand, because the proverbial shit is going to hit the fan. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. The links that pertain to this article can be found in the description box, and make sure you click on the link. That way you can look at all of these documents for yourself. And to those of you who have donated to the GoFundMe, thank you so much. All right, everybody, we'll be back tomorrow morning, and I will have a little bit of a better handle, I hope, on what exactly is in those documents, and maybe we'll find a little bit something that is new. Until then, I hope you all have a fantastic night.